In this video, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of doing an EGR delete on your vehicle. So if you're thinking about doing it, or you're already planning to, this might be the best video for you to watch. Let's get started. Before we get into the pros and cons, let's quickly go over what an EGR delete is. EGR stands for exhaust gas recirculation, which is a system that sends some exhaust gases back into the engine to reduce emissions and lower engine temperature. An EGR delete means removing or disabling that system, usually to improve performance, fuel economy, or avoid issues like carbon buildup. Now let's look into the positives and negatives of doing it. Pros: improved power. The first positive thing about doing an EGR delete is that it can improve engine performance. By removing the EGR system, you allow for better airflow and reduce exhaust back pressure. This helps the engine breathe more freely, which can lead to a noticeable power increase, usually around 5 to 15%, depending on the vehicle. It can also make throttle response feel quicker and give the engine a bit more torque, especially at lower RPMs. Better fuel economy. The second pro of doing an EGR delete is better fuel economy. With improved airflow and engine efficiency, the engine doesn't have to work as hard to push exhaust gases around. This can lead to a fuel economy improvement of up to 20%, depending on the vehicle and driving conditions. You might notice fewer trips to the gas station, especially on longer drives or highway use. Just keep in mind that results can vary, but many drivers do see a noticeable difference. Lower intake temperatures. Another benefit of doing an EGR delete is lower engine temperatures. Since exhaust gases are no longer being recycled back into the intake, the engine runs cooler. This reduces stress on internal parts and helps prevent overheating during heavy use. Over time, running at lower temperatures can also help extend the life of the engine, especially if you drive in tough conditions like towing or stop-and-go traffic. Enhanced throttle response. Another positive of doing it is better throttle response. With less exhaust gas going back into the intake, the engine gets cleaner air, which helps it respond faster when you press the gas pedal. This can reduce or even get rid of turbo lag, which is the delay you sometimes feel before the turbo kicks in. That means smoother acceleration and better control, especially when you need quick power, like during passing or merging onto highways. Now, let's get into the cons. Check engine light. The first con of doing an EGR delete is that it can trigger a check engine light. Since the EGR system is part of your vehicle's emissions control, removing it might cause the computer to detect a problem and turn on the check engine light. This is because the system is still looking for signals from the EGR that are no longer there. In most cases, you'll need a custom tune to turn off the EGR-related error codes, which can cost extra. Without that, you might not pass emissions tests or inspections in some areas. Increased emissions. The next point to take into consideration is the impact on emissions. Removing the EGR system can increase nitrogen oxides, NOx emissions, which are harmful pollutants. The EGR helps lower these emissions by sending some exhaust gases back into the engine to reduce combustion temperature. Without it, NOx levels go up, and that can cause your vehicle to fail emissions tests, especially in areas with strict environmental rules. So if your area requires regular emissions checks, this is something to seriously think about. Potential power loss. Another thing to consider, especially with newer diesel engines, is that removing the EGR without proper tuning can actually reduce performance. Modern diesel engines are built to work with the EGR system in place. If you delete it without adjusting the engine's software, it can mess with the airflow and lead to a drop in power instead of an improvement. In some cases, it can also affect fuel injection timing and turbo performance. So if you're going to delete the EGR, a proper tune is not just helpful, it's usually necessary to avoid hurting performance. Higher exhaust gas temperatures, EGTS. Something else to keep in mind is how it affects temperatures inside the engine. While removing the EGR can lower intake temperatures, it can also cause exhaust gas temperatures, EGTs, to rise. This happens because the EGR system helps cool down the combustion process, and without it, the engine can run hotter on the exhaust side. If EGTs get too high, it can put stress on components like the turbo or pistons. That's why it's a good idea to install and monitor an EGT gauge if you plan to do an EGR delete, especially if you tow, drive hard, or have other performance upgrades. So that's about it for the pros and cons of doing an EGR delete. If you're wondering what the best choice is for your vehicle, well, that really depends on your situation. You'll be the only one who can decide what works best for how you drive, where you live, and what your car needs. Just make sure you understand both the benefits and the possible downsides before making any changes. Always do the proper research or talk to a trusted mechanic if you're still unsure. We hope you find this video helpful, and if you're dealing with some other problems with your car, let us know by leaving a comment below, and we'll assist that next here on Fix It. Thanks for watching, subscribe.